I am recording. Hi, everybody, live from the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, this beautiful September 25th day. With us today, and our main topic in continuing our climate voter campaign from the League of Conservation Voters. She is the Southwest Michigan Field Organizer, a great affiliate and lots of help to the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. Shannon Abbott is here with us today to talk about environmental issues in the state, as well as show us an amazing scorecard tool that if you don't know about, you should be using every day from the League of Conservation Voters. So Shannon, I am gonna just let you roll with the rest of this, and hopefully we'll still have some time for questions at the end.
Sounds good. Thank you, Denise. So as Denise just mentioned, and for those of you who don't know me, my name is Shannon Abbott. I'm the West Michigan Field Organizer for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. I work directly with community members to engage them and activate them on critical environmental and good governmental issues that are facing our state. So Michigan League of Conservation Voters it really fits a special space within this movement by being the only nonpartisan political organization in Michigan with land, air, and water at the center of our work. And we do this on a state level by advancing policies, mobilizing voters, and doing everything that we can to ensure that we're electing the right state leaders, and by holding all of those leaders accountable as well. So we build our work around 4 key pillars. Advocate, which regardless of whichever party is in power, you can count on us in Lansing to fight and to advance policies that protect our health, our safety, and ultimately our way of life. Mobilize, which is all about, when bad policies move forward and when good ones need support as well. We're there to mobilize voters across the state to speak out when and where it will have the greatest impact. Elect, when elections are held across the Great Lakes state, we fight to elect the right leaders who will restore our state's commitment to preserving natural resources. And accountability. So when media is no longer paying attention, we're keeping track of votes and keeping score and holding our elected officials accountable. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes here. So I want to share our goal is ultimately to have a conservation majority within the state legislature as an organization, because we know that if we have people on both sides of the aisle that care about the environment, then we can push for good policy change. So a conservation majority is exactly what we're constantly pushing for. We are hosted by a family of organizations to be able to do all of the great work that we do. We have the Michigan LCV Educational Fund, which engages elected officials, business leaders, and all Michigan residents to take action on the most pressing land, air, and water issues that are facing our state. We also conduct nonpartisan civic engagement work, such as get out the vote efforts and citizen organizing on specific policy issues. This branch of our organization is mostly focused on educating and equipping citizens with the tools that they need to take action. We also run our civic engagement program through this organization that works to register voters, educating on voting rights, pushing for things with the redistricting commission, making sure that all of that kind of stuff is put into place. The Michigan LCV Fund, or family organization, is what most people know us for. This endorses pro-conservation candidates for state legislator and governor's office and educates voters about legislators' conservation records, which again we'll talk about in a few moments here. So this is where we also do our direct lobbying and advocacy for candidates. We also have 2 PACs, the Michigan LCV PAC, which directly supports the campaigns of conservation champions that we partner with, and the Conservation Voters of Michigan PAC, which supports independent campaigns to elect champions into office. So through this organization, we work to elect conservation champions without coordinating with the campaigns. So just kind of a bullet point, knowing that we're a large group that does a lot of different things, and to make sure that we're doing it the right way, we have all of these things set up. So we do have several pillars of our work in no particular order. The first is clean air here. We should not have to question whether our air is safe to breathe. Bad actors, including industries, are not being held accountable for the responsible partners that they should be to their communities. Some leaders have no interest in developing cleaner energy sources, as we all know, that are both cheaper and better for our air quality. And many leaders don't understand the impact that chronic air pollution has on the lives of families living near industrial facilities specifically. From asthma attacks to spiking cancer rates, the impact of tainted air can be devastating, and it requires serious action. The next is all about our healthy Great Lakes. For those of you who might be maybe like an angler who's watched places like Lake Erie's algae problem grow over the past decade, turning the shallowest waters and the Great Lakes into green, thick algae sludge. Maybe some of you have kids and grandkids that like playing on Lake Michigan's beaches, only to be disappointed when E. coli or other contaminants make the water unsafe for swimming. Or for those of you that, like me, shudder at the thought of what might happen to Mackinac Island and the shores of northern Michigan if there were a spill under the Straits of Mackinac. Michigan sits at the heart of almost or around 90% of the nation's fresh surface water, and protecting our Great Lakes will always be at the center of Michigan LCV's work. Our economy, our health, the very way of life is all shaped by the Great Lakes. But things like invasive species, runoff, toxic algae blooms, they all threaten Michigan's future. And ultimately, it's the state's greatest natural resource. Then parks and public land is another pillar of ours. Michigan state parks and lands are second to none, and for decades, residents have worked hard to preserve and protect and invest in our parks and natural areas, but some state leaders just don't seem to understand what's at stake with that. Then there's the super important topic of safe drinking water. Everyone deserves access to safe and affordable drinking water that's free from lead, industrial contamination, runoff, and other toxins. Fortunately, too many communities across Michigan struggle with affordable and polluted water, while corporations are allowed to pump and profit off of our clean water with few limitations. Pollution in our water is measured in parts per billion, so there really isn't any room for error when protecting the water that we drink. In recent years, we all know Michiganders have known better than most how high the stakes can actually be when our community's clean water is compromised. And last but not least, good government in our pillars. Michigan ranks 49th out of 50 states in terms of transparency and good governance. In a recent study from George Washington University, it showed that over 90% of those polled, including all political parties, supported efforts by state governments to initiate stronger standards for accountability and government transparency. In spite of clear consensus for reforms, few, if any, have moved forward in recent years, and adding insult to injury, we have severely outdated elections infrastructure. Each year, there are enormous threats to the health of Michigan's democratic process. It's a process that is fundamental to achieving our mission that we all care about here. Passing strong laws to protect our environment and to push against climate change depends upon open and fair elections so that we can help elect pro-conservation decision makers into office. This work is absolutely key in the work that we do. Our organization is called the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. So I wanted to give you kind of a rundown, a little bit of who we are. And I know that we also said that I would be talking about a few of our key issues. And as you know from what I just went over, there are so many, but I want to go over a few of the ones that we're actively working on right now. So I'd also like to encourage everybody real quick to check out our social media on our main website, which is michiganlcv.org, to learn about some of the things happening right now across our state and what we're doing about it. And so one of the actions that we have a really strong focus on through the state and in West Michigan is toxics in our drinking water, and specifically lead and PFAS. Most of us know the issues with lead pipes and paint. We all know what's taken place in Flint, and so many communities, or that community still does not have access to clean water, and it's over 5 years later for many of them. So Flint is not the only community to deal with this issue. We're working diligently to ensure, for instance, that the Filter First program is instituted at schools to filter out lead and other toxins. This is super important right now since the schools have been vacant and water has been stagnant in the pipes. Educational and other institutions need to know the dangers and proper safety techniques in turning the water back on and ensuring that water is properly filtered for protection. Through the state and the country, lead pipelines still exist, and the state and local governments have implemented stricter standards than ever before, and plans to ensure that all lead pipelines are replaced. But this is a process that's scheduled to take over a decade to complete, and a lot of money. So PFAS, also known as forever chemicals or polyfluoroalkyl substances, are a grouping of chemicals that were created in the late 1940s and became heavily used in the 1950s and 60s. This is a grouping known as forever chemicals. They do not break down in the environment or in our bodies over time, ultimately. They just simply continue to build up. So PFAS is found in all sorts of things that we touch and use every day. And it has a primary use of a super durable waterproofing and nonstick agent. You'll find it in carpet, you find it in food packaging and wrappers, you find it in firefighting foam, nonstick cookware, and waterproof apparel like winter coats, and so much more. We ingest these products in small amounts from these sources, but the waste from these different types of businesses that actually produce these products, such as paper mills, leather tanneries, metal plating companies, even our dump sites for trash disposal. It's contaminated land and water systems everywhere. This affects our drinking water, both on some city water systems and in well water. It also impacts our recreation, fishing, and hunting as examples of that. And climate change has had a huge impact with the heavier rains and with the major flooding that's been happening. It's spreading this contamination in areas that weren't seen before. There are 148 active sites that the state has started or has completed testing on, and it's estimated that there's over 1,000 more. This is a global issue and is heavily linked to infertility, cancer, thyroid disorders, inability to host vaccines for things like the flu and soon to be COVID vaccines as well. It's a really scary and complex issue, and Michigan, through the work of teams like ours and in partnership with affected community members and community groups on the ground, have ensured that our state is at the forefront of battling this toxic chemical grouping. Every week, more sites are found and more people are affected, and we're working really hard to make sure that we have all the updates on that. So PFAS is also now linked to the oil and gas industry, which leads me to another major issue that keeps evolving that we work really hard on, which is Line 5, Enbridge's oil pipeline. So Enbridge, the same oil pipeline company that was responsible for the devastating oil spill in the Kalamazoo River about 10 years ago, also owns the 67-year-old pipeline that was made to only last 50 years, and it spans across Michigan's Upper Peninsula, into the waters and through the Straits of Mackinac, then across the Lower Peninsula. The pipeline actually starts in Canada near Wisconsin and ends in Canada near Detroit. It transports Canadian oil and takes a shortcut through over 400 Michigan waterways and provides a very little benefit to our state, as I'm sure we all know. There's so much that I could tell you about Line 5. It's a huge passion of mine, and all of the reasons that it's unsafe and puts us at risk every day, absolutely every single day. But let me simply say that Enbridge is a company that continues to prove that they're reckless and can't be trusted. The risk of something like this is not one that we should be taking, and Enbridge refuses to take the liability on if a devastating catastrophe like a spill in the Great Lakes were to happen. And the proposed solution of building a new tunnel is not only dangerous for workers and the Great Lakes, but it also puts investment into unsustainable and outdated energy sources that are just simply not needed to power our state. There are public hearings and comment sessions coming up this month and next month regarding the issue and permits that Enbridge is seeking to build new infrastructure. And we need everyone, not just here in Michigan, but everyone everywhere to weigh in on this super critical issue. With over 20% of the world's fresh surface water here at risk, and it's actually 95% of the US fresh surface water, this has ramifications at a global scale. Enbridge's Line 5 has recently resumed full operations since the significant damage to one of the twin pipelines in the Straits of Mackinac was found after receiving approval from the Federal Pipeline and Hazard Materials Agency and Ingham County Circuit Court. Both of those places did not find any current integrity issues, though our Attorney General is continuing to maintain that this pipeline is a present and clear danger to the state. We're continuing to mobilize people around this issue and trying to put pressure on our other elected officials and our governor to shut this pipeline down. We need to be thinking about ultimately climate resiliency rather than profit. We need to ensure that our communities are prepared and ready, not only to mitigate, but to ultimately stop the destruction of the impacts of climate change, such as extreme weather patterns, flooding, drought, aggressive waters, and lakeshore erosion. And that's why we're working on issues like Line 5. That's why we're working to ensure a new gas plant isn't built to replace the one now closed in Grand Haven. That's why we've joined the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition in efforts to push for local and state level action on the climate emergency that we are in, and pushing our public utilities like DTE and Consumers Energy to do better and think about communities' affordability and access when creating these transition plans and energy rates, ultimately in improving infrastructure across the board. We'll say real quickly too that the Public Service Commission recently approved a $144 million increase in consumers' natural gas rates, which is only 60% of what the utility had originally asked for. But what this is going to do is residential consumers are going to see a 9.1% increase in their natural gas rates as a result of this decision. Additionally, that settlement does require consumers to provide a one-time payment of $2 million to the nonprofit Heat and Warmth Fund, which helps low-income consumers pay their energy bills. As you can tell, I could talk about these issues all day, every day, and dive even further into them, but I know we're running low on time, and these things can be overwhelming, but you know, climate change is an umbrella that connects all of these issues and all of our issues together. So I want to take you and show you some resources that we have available. So I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen here real quick, and I'm going to share a different page. Our website has some really cool tools on it. So this is the main, our main C4 website, which has the most information because this has all of our accountability and stuff like that on here. So you'll see some updates about what's new and what's currently happening, what our priorities are, and a few other pieces of information on that main page. If you click on this menu bar here, and I'm going to actually expand this out a little bit, you're going to find, again, some more information on those priorities. You're going to see an accountability section, a little bit of information on the elections, endorsements, and all of that type of thing, as well as some of our events that are coming up. So in our accountability tool, this is my favorite thing, and I waited so long for the digital one to go live, but this tool is absolutely amazing. It's called our Digital Accountability Suite. This was developed based on the idea of our scorecards that we used to print and share out with folks once every term session. And what that showed is how all of our elected officials in the state were voting on the issues that matter to us in Lansing. So now it's all digital, it's in real time. You click on that digital accountability toolkit, all you do is you actually enter in your information. I'll do mine here real quick. Try not to stalk me. I'm in Grandville is where I live. I just, when it's not COVID, travel back and forth. So I'm going to get my scorecard. You'll see some links down below if you just want to search by lawmaker or legislation and see previous scorecards as well. But when you pop your information in here, once this loads up, it's going to take us to a page that actually shows who my elected officials are, starting at the top offices, how they're doing. You can learn a little bit more about what those scores actually mean, and who my state lawmakers are, as well as contact information for how to get a hold of them. This tool is absolutely amazing. I just moved. My other people had 100%. So seeing a 60% and a 67% here doesn't make me super happy. But the cool thing about this is I can look at this and say, hey, Mark, why do you only have 67%? I can click on see more, and it's going to take me to a page that shows how this person has actually voted on particular pieces of legislation. I can also click on a particular piece of legislation and I can find out more about what that actually is, like House Bill 4465 and 4069. It gives you a summary of what that was and why we supported or didn't support it. And it's set up as a pro-environment or an anti-environmental vote, which I think is super helpful. Through this, again, you can also go back and you can look at a list of legislation and what we've actually been grading people on this session. It was a slow start to this year, but they are starting to ramp up and try to push things through super quickly. So you'll see things like the no stricter than federal piece of legislation. You'll see some solar bills and things like that. So I encourage everybody to go through and take a look at these pieces. And also find your legislator. Figure out where they stand on these issues. You'll notice that some of the folks that have lower scores voted in favor of solar tax credits, which I find super fascinating. So we can use those when we're talking to some of our lawmakers and encourage them to do the right thing on other issues as well, and find out, you know, why did you vote on this, but you didn't vote in favor of us on this? You'll go through and you can see a full list of all of the lawmakers across the state and how everybody's ranking. I'm going to stop sharing my screen there real quick. And I'm going to open this up to questions from folks in just a moment if you'd like for me to go through any of this any further. Our website, again, we have the digital scorecard as well as a whole bunch of other information on it at michiganlcv.org. You're also going to find some of this information on our social media pages. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We do also have a YouTube page if you're interested in that as well. My contact information is down at the bottom here, so feel free to reach out to me anytime. Call or text. This is my cell phone number and my email address. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I have no idea how much time I took up. Sorry, kind of went on a couple of tangents, but I want to leave time for some questions.
You did absolutely perfect. You even, yeah, like even though I made you start 5 minutes late. I'm sure folks have questions. Thank you so much for that great overview, Shannon. I see Donna has her hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, Shannon, that was awesome. Thank you. I may have missed it because I was, you were scrolling through a little bit quickly, the scorecard.
Oh, yeah.
Question about, I wonder if you know how those scorecard criteria were derived, and I did not see agriculture on there, which kind of surprised me.
Yeah, so agriculture kind of falls into some of the other pillar topics. So it'll fall into clean water, for instance, or land use as an example. So CAFOs typically will fall into the water, clean drinking water and healthy Great Lakes. But we do have a focus on that as well. So thank you for asking that question.
Thank you.
As far as the scorecard itself and how that information is derived, is we always have our thumbs on the scale and Lansing and listening into what's actually coming about. We have relationships with all of the elected officials. Some are better than others, obviously, in Lansing, as well as with some of the state departments as well, so that we know what people are talking about, what things are at the forefront, and we can also help work with our lawmakers and community members to help develop legislation and to try to push it through onto the floor for a vote. So we do have a government affairs team, which is our certified lobbyist team, essentially. And that is what they do every day, is connecting on these issues, helping to rewrite and adjust policies that are currently being discussed, helping to educate those lawmakers on the issues that we're talking about here, and to help push them to either put something to a vote, or to do the right thing ultimately. And part of how that happens and putting that pressure on them is through channeling different parts of our team, like the field team, to help mobilize community members to help put that pressure on too. So we do let all of the lawmakers know this is something that we're looking at. This is something that we're either thinking about scoring or something that we're definitely going to score. So we're expecting you to do the right thing. And that's just kind of a decision that's done by our entire team and our board. Hopefully that helps. And input from you guys ultimately too, things that matter to the community, we always push through the chain.
Tom has his hand raised.
Go for it, Tom.
Shannon, I'm just wondering if you have an active voter outreach program or programs going on for this election.
We do, yeah. We actually have a multi-tiered program. Part of it, I have no idea what's actually happening because I'm legally not allowed to know because it's part of one of the PACs. We do also have our civic engagement team that has been doing get out the vote and voter registration efforts for months now. And our field team has been working with community members to bring people to the table so that, you know, basically now through the election, we're going to be making calls to make sure that people have a plan to vote. We're also going to be pushing for our endorsed candidates in our highest tiered districts. I'll say the most swayable ones, especially, we're going to put the biggest efforts into. And yeah, there's social media. There's a lot of website things that we actually have a specific website that, and I don't know it off the top of my head, that they've been directing people to make sure that they're registered to vote and have all of the proper information on who can and when to and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm in District 61. Which you identified as top ranked. I'm working actively for Christine Morris, but if you have stuff going on here, let me know. I'd be happy to dovetail with whatever actions you've got going.
Thank you. I will put my C4 hat on for a moment here, and I'm going to officially say that so I don't get myself into trouble, and say that House District 61 is our top district in West Michigan. All of our volunteers were pulling into House District 61, whether they're in Grand Rapids or Muskegon or St. Clair, wherever. We want them to be trying to get the right candidate elected in House District 61, which for our organization is Christine Morris is endorsed. So we are starting to make calls on behalf of her campaign. And working directly with her in other ways as well to ensure that the community knows that she champions environmental issues. What other questions do folks have, if any? And I'm sorry I went through the website pretty quickly. I can do it again if anybody needs me to.
No, I think that was good. Other questions? For Shannon. You're all scared of the record button? If I turn that off, should we have an open discussion now? How does that feel to you, Shannon, who probably wants to be off record?
I am always ready to be off record.
We'll have a little time left for the meeting, but I do see some students on here. So one point that I'll put my Dr. Keel hat on that I always like to make, and many of you in the coalition know that I'm always bringing up the polls and what kinds of things that folks in the public are thinking about is important. Yale's new surveys are out. The numbers keep rising on climate change and its importance. Marianne helped me out with the Luntz report. I mean, these things are out there, but as former students and current students on this call know, public opinion is nothing without salience, right? And if we are not voting on these issues and being environment and climate voters, that's why Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition is having this campaign to learn about these ways that you can get educated on the folks who currently represent you and the folks who are running for your vote, right? It's not enough to just say, this is an issue that's important to me, that's helpful in the polls, but if we're not showing ourselves out there on this climate vote, then that's how we hold politicians accountable. And so I just want to give a huge hats off. Of course, everybody in my class has gotten to use that scorecard. I'm a big fan of the scorecard in order to teach folks, again, these resources about how to learn about your candidates, right? And don't forget the League of Women Voters. The candidate guide is now out because ballots are out, and they have also asked an environment and climate question so that you can go and you can compare candidates side by side for all those districts that you are in. And of course, you're going to all join us for our candidate climate forum on October 4th with all those House races, the 60, 61, 63, and 66. All right, I'm going to stop recording and say bye, but the rest of us are going to talk for just a few minutes.